These are the layers of our planet. The crust. In between the crust and the next layer, the mantle, is the Mohorovičić discontinuity. A fancy way to say the space between the crust and the mantle. Between the mantle and the next layer down, the outer core, is the Gutenberg discontinuity. The fancy way to say space where the outer core begins and the mantle ends. And then we get down to the inner core. The inner core is a very, very hot, very, very fast spinning ball of iron. And it spins. But let's look at the crust. The crust is the rocky spot where we stand on top of it. And that crust is broken into plates of giant plates of rock. They float on the mantle, which is made of liquid hot magma. Now the reason I have this labeled like this is because the crust, which is broken into giant plates, is the reason we have earthquakes. So let's take a look at the world map. Do you see how the continents all kind of seem to circle around the oceans? One of those big circles formed the western edge of North America and South America, and I guess you could call them the eastern edge of Asia and Australia, are called the circum-Pacific border around the ocean. And circum-Pacific is a fancy way to say border around the Pacific Ocean. And that border is part of one of those giant rocky plates. And that is called the Ring of Fire. Because that plate is a spot where some magma gets through from the mantle. And there's a whole lot of volcanoes. There's volcanoes up there, volcanoes there, volcanoes there, more down here, and there's even some. I'm going to walk across to Asia right now. That was a long trip, wasn't it, boys and girls? There's volcanoes, and there's earthquakes right in this area, okay? So that's why the layers of the earth are important, so you understand where earthquakes would be nice, but earthquake is what it is. Earthquakes happen because when you understand why things happen, they become a lot less scary. Still a little scary, but a lot less. Now, earthquakes are just seismic waves that pass through Earth's rocks. Seismic waves happen when some form of energy stored in the Earth's crust is released. Usually when those giant plates bump against each other, forming the crust of the Earth. When the plates forming the crust of the Earth bump, slip, or rub against each other. Most earthquakes occur in belts around the edges of tectonic plates. The most earthquakes happen along the circum-Pacific belt, also known as the Ring of Fire, around the Pacific Ocean. 80% of earthquake energy is released from the Ring of Fire. Now, what do you do in an earthquake? Let's find out in our next video.